Welcome back to the Late for Load-In podcast. I'm Chris. I'm here with my co-host Josh, and on this week's episode, we have probably the man in our world of music that needs the least amount of intro, and that would be Mr. Kevin Lyman, the founder of the Vans Warped Tour.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Absolutely. And this was a super fun episode, and I was honestly kind of shocked that he agreed to do it, just because I can imagine that at this point with, we recorded this a couple weeks ago, but even still, we were only, a little over a month out from Warped Tour kicking off from its triumphant return, and he found a little bit of time to sit down and chat with us about the early days of Warped Tour and what the current challenges are for putting on something like Warped Tour in 2025, because a lot has changed since the tour went away.
Yeah, it was an exciting one for me because Kevin has, as the founder of Warped Tour, I've said this over and over again. I don't think that I would be the person, not only in my career but in my life, that I am today without experiencing Vans Warped Tour from a fan perspective, and then I did a bunch of them, so it was a special one personally to have him on.
Yeah, totally. And I think that if there was ever one thing that we could point to that took our underground scenes, and I'm using that collectively as like punk, hardcore, metalcore,
for sure,
whatever, all these smaller pop and R&B artists, whatever. If we can point to one thing that culturally changed like the perspective of how people viewed the world of music that we all live in, it's got to be the Vans Warped Tour. So probably the most important piece of musical touring history that really shaped all the bands that you love today, really.
Definitely. And that's one of the things too that a lot of people don't even realize is how far some of the people that started out on Warped Tour went to go, with Eminem and Katy Perry and MGK and people like that who went on to become household name worldwide celebrities.
Yep, and even outside of just the artists themselves, the crew that started out on Warped Tour. At one point, Billie Eilish's entire crew was all Warped Tour staff.
100%.
And so, it just, Kevin created a movement that really changed the lives of, more people than we could even begin to count. And I think will continue to have lasting effects throughout the rest of history, really, honestly.
I say so. We used to call Warped Tour boot camp. If you could get through Warped Tour, you could get through any tour. So it's an awesome thing that I'm so excited that it's coming back, because that's one of the things that we talk about kind of regularly as well, is that I feel like this generation doesn't get to experience from a band and a fan perspective, doesn't get to experience Warped Tour and have the opportunities to grow at the speed they were able to grow, that Warped Tour kind of allowed them to do so.
Totally. Yeah. I will give credit where credit's due. There have been other promoters who have come in and started to really improve the landscape of festivals in America over the past few years. But I don't think any of them will ever have the cultural impact that Warped Tour has as a whole over its entire lifetime.
100%.
And so
it was a movement.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a really awesome talk. I feel really honored that Kevin was willing to sit down and chat with us for a bit, and I hope you guys enjoy this week's episode with Kevin Lyman of the Warped Tour. This episode of Late for Load-In is brought to you by Rockabilia.com, your go-to destination for 100% official band merchandise. No bootlegs, no cheap knockoffs, just authentic gear straight from the bands you love. From metal and punk to classic rock and beyond, Rockabilia has over 500,000 items in stock. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, patches, and even rare, hard-to-find collectibles. If you're looking for something exclusive, Rockabilia drops brand new limited edition merch every month. So if you see something you like, grab it before it's gone. And in fact, we just placed an order for some new merch ourselves. I picked up a very, very cool Linkin Park Meteora hoodie. Josh, did you grab something?
Yeah, I grabbed a couple things. I got a super limited Eminem tour shirt, and then what you mentioned not missing out. I saw a Meatloaf tour shirt from 2005 that I really, really wanted. Unfortunately, they didn't have my size, so I missed out on that one.
Well, there you have it. Don't wait. Our friends at Rockabilia are hooking up Late for Load-In listeners with 10% off when you use code LOAD at checkout. So if your band T collection needs a refresh and you want to support the artists who make the music we love, hit up rockabilia.com, load up your cart, and drop in code LOAD, LOAD, for that sweet discount. Now let's roll today's show. Kevin Lyman, thanks for joining us on the Late for Load-In podcast. It's great to have you, man.
Thanks for having me.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's our pleasure, especially because I imagine things are probably starting to get a little crazy for you with Warped. It's right around the corner.
Work was one thing, and then it's just, life has caught up a little bit, like anyone, I guess it just was, like we say, it was our turn,
Right.
we live in a country of changing weather patterns, and, people in the South get tornadoes, you get hurricanes in certain part of the country.
Oh, yeah.
And we just, unfortunately, we're living in the city that had the fire, Altadena, California. But the good news for us, it's tough. There's still so many people going through so much out here, but we were able to return to our home this week, and feels nice to be back in the house.
Yeah, that's great news.
Yeah, I bet it does.
Yeah, I can't. Well, I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's sad stuff, and I want to get into. We're moving forward now, thankfully, and it's awesome that you guys are back in your house. But we were saying right before we started recording here that like I can't imagine what it was like, being on the opposite side of the country, like what it was like to live through that. And Josh said that, we were seeing all of your updates throughout the whole process. And I'm just thankful that, you guys, the people, are safe and healthy. I know you guys lost a lot of stuff from like smoke damage, and I don't know if there any actual fire damage, but those things are, thankfully, they're things, they're replaceable.
They're just things,
right. And the precious things, the unreplaceable things like human beings, everybody's healthy and well. That thankful for that much at least.
Yeah, so it's between school, that's been let's say an eventful start to 2020.
Right.
It's packed a lot of excitement into the year, and yeah, we are. It's now it's to the point where I just got to go do a show. It's fun to be able to work on these, but you just want to get out there and do a show and get see who's coming to your show.
Totally.
I'm really grateful for all the people who bought a ticket, early on. I mean, the show's sold out, except for Orlando has a few left, but we've got a bunch of bands to announce still coming up. And, and then being able to build this lineup, and it's kind of I think an eclectic lineup like Warped Tour. It's a little bit of everything for everyone. And, everyone's kind of, and I go, I won't know until the first day, like, who's there, really? You get, everyone uses data analytics and this, and I want to see I like to see faces and bodies.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Beings. And that's kind of, I love that, everyone's like, well, I said, well, there's so many listeners on this. So, I'm like, look, it really comes down to, the people coming in, and can we deliver, that day that you remember, but make sure that it was up to date in the sense that, they're big, we had big crowds at Warped Tour, but this is a little bit of a monster with some of the shows that we're going to have, and good production people around me. So, some of those old production people, I don't know if some of your listeners might know Chris Holland, but remember him cutting his teeth at My Chemical Romance. That was the funniest thing for me because Chris was one of my biggest pains in the asses, like growing up. And, now I'm working with him, and he's grown into who he was. He always knew he had the raw talent to become a great production person, and Brian Yablonsky, and they're bringing back Greg Teal, and Kenny's coming out and working the shows. At backstage, we'll have Lisa Johnson and Michelle Pons, Mona, and some of those familiar faces. And of course, Sully's out there with some of the biggest country artists in the world, but he's going to come back and be there to greet the bands and help. He's not going to be running the barricades like he used to, but he's back there hanging and helping me out. Just kind of, we want to make sure everyone comes and has a nice experience.
Is Carrie coming over?
Yeah, well, Carrie will come over. Carrie will come over for the Long Beach shows.
Okay, great, great.
Would Like to bring Carrie in on a bigger role, but it's with so many moving pieces and such a different audience right here. Doing a 2-month tour was easy. Like, that there were like, you guys show up in the parking lot. You get your shoes, you get your meal ticket, it takes 2 days just to kind of flow. And then, I don't really have to think about 99% of you or just know the routine, and we're on the road for 2 months. Well, you have to deal with whatever. But, these are 3 complete separate shows, 3 different places, and a bigger production that you can't just put up and down in 4 hours.
I was gonna ask how has this time been different than the past of planning actual tour opposed to doing it just in 3 individual shows in 3 different territories?
Way more meetings. way more Zoom calls, way more Zoom calls with way more people on them than the 3 or 4 people we sat around my garage and just worked year round on this project. It's a lot more. There's a lot more. Festivals have changed a little bit since
Sure.
in 5 years, and it's not. There's more regulations, there's more paperwork, there's more things. It's just more of everything. And I got to say that they've been really helpful to me. That Insomniac team, which so many of them have experience on Warped Tour, kind of dealing with what they have to. Where I was used to being in the middle of everything, I can still be there, but I'm trusting them to do their jobs.
Sure.
And I get to create all the fun stuff, make sure the merch booths are there. And all that stuff.
Are you going to be there on the bike, riding around, checking out the festival ground? Are you going to switch it up with the golf cart? What you going to do?
No, I have a bike. I'm feeling
Okay.
healthy right now. 7 surgeries later, I'm ready to jump back out, and I'm really excited. I think that I always said if you lose the goosebumps, it's time to go. And
Sure.
I get pretty exhausted at the end of that run, and with everything else I had going on in my life. And I'm actually getting goosebumps talking about it right now a little bit. Like,
Good.
Okay, we're ready to go, and
It's coming up soon.
and show that that crowd. One, we're going to make sure that it pays homage to where it was, but also got to look forward to some of these new artists. I'm getting excited about watching some of these bands all of a sudden, like Paradox and Magnolia Park and Lolo. And the more we can promote them before those dates at Warped Tour, I think, that's important. I don't have to worry about, day to remember. They're just going to come and crush it. Or,
Right.
Or Acid Alexandria, or, I can go on and on with, the bands that always bring it on Warped. But for me, if Warped is going to be a success, we have to take some of those young bands and like we used to and really show just where that next era, the next generation's coming up. So
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Warped Tour has historically kind of been a really good launching board for younger artists to get their opportunity to play in front of, larger crowds that may not have ever realized these bands existed, and then go on to explode to be look at the My Chems of the world and the Paramores of the world and the A Day to Remembers of the world, like all these bands that early on in their career got the opportunity to go out on Warped Tour and play to these audiences that they may not have gotten the opportunity to do something like that before had Warped Tour not existed. So historically, that's where a lot of our scene kind of got the footing from.
Absolutely. I would say the majority of our scene
100%.
was born on Warped Tour.
yeah,
Absolutely.
So I think there's going to be a lot of younger people coming who now have just heard about it.
Yep.
Sure.
In a sense, kind of when Warped Tour was ending, it was just kind of not too good or bad. It was just people took it for granted in a way. Oh, here comes Warped Tour.
I agree 1,000%.
It's going to be here. Here's what Warped Tour is. Oh, I can go next year if it's not here. Then it went away, and then people go, well, there's a lot of cool festivals and a lot of things out there, but there was really one Warped Tour. And I'm not patting myself on the back. There was one vibe.
You're absolutely correct.
And then, when I came back, people are like, well, things have changed. I go, well, we can't change too much. We got to make sure all the bands have a chance to sell their merch out of their tents. Hopefully those bands, a lot of the bands will remember at least and go out there and sign a few autographs for the fans.
Absolutely.
We got, I think, 24 nonprofits involved. We're doing the canned food drive that I think is so important now. When we have a government that's cutting food programs, I think we all need to do a canned food drive.
Yep.
I think, there's going to be a lot. And then now it's funny because now everyone's talking about, like, we used to figure out those barbecues at 5:00 in the afternoon. Like, what's the barbecue going to be tonight? Oh, who wants to play? Now I've got everyone calling and wanting to do something fun at the barbecue. And already today, it's a little early to talk about it, but there's potentially something we're going to be able to do with the barbecue that's going to be like so awesome.
Amazing.
On a couple of those. But yesterday I go, wait, I'm talking about a barbecue like a month ahead of time. Like,
yeah.
So I'm glad we're in a spot where we can talk about that. That means we've really started that we're prepared.
Yeah.
Did you strategically put Florida in November? Is the question that I have.
Absolutely. Well,
okay, good. I don't blame you.
For a couple reasons. One, Insomniac has their large EDC the week before.
Oh, sure. So you get to use
some of those fences, everything we had to do, had to think about that ticket price.
Sure.
We brought that ticket price as far down as we possibly could and made it as reasonable for someone to come to the show. But everything has to be looked at. Like, those dressing room trailers. Well, we got to share. If we can share them with another festival, that's great because you save some money. you don't save as much as you would hope sometimes, but over a festival like this, you could save, a couple $100,000.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. See, I was just thinking the heat. Personally, that's all I was thinking about.
I was thinking heat. I was thinking dodging all the crazy storms you guys get.
That
I was
too.
dodging hurricane season.
November,
I was thinking all that stuff. I didn't consider the logistical side of things.
Those kids in Florida, though, I think that they thrive on that.
They do.
If there was not, if you didn't have like a 20% chance of getting like some natural disaster potentially taking you out, I don't think they're going to feel like it was a real Warped Tour. We might have to have like a lightning machine or something that, that just makes the visuals right.
You know what? I'm sure bands could live without their merch boxes floating away from their merch tables when the merch area floods out, though.
Absolutely. I was at the farmer's market this weekend, and it was raining out here in Southern California yesterday, and I was just looking at all these tents and people under them trying to sell their fruits and vegetables, thinking, oh my God, I remember like pretty much the merch boxes floating away, and in Toronto or wherever.
Oh yeah, I remember
Buffalo. I think I actually saw that. We see that, and not realizing that for economics for a young band, you lose a box of merchandise. I mean,
absolutely.
That throws your people don't realize the margins are so thin for everyone. In this business, no matter what size you are, you get to a certain point and it's different. But for 95% of the bands out there in the world, you lose a box of merchandise, and that's an economic blow.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Same thing for us. I think people, economics were, something so important that we all had to look at. So for us, it was like less chance of having that show. Now, I don't want to say too loud because my wife says, it's funny how the world works. That if you say
sure,
but November is usually pretty nice down there in Florida.
It is. I want to go back to early Kevin Lyman days of where did you grow up, and was music always around, or is it something that you kind of found elsewhere?
It was interesting. It's kind of asking. So people have been asking me, like, everyone goes, "What's your childhood like?" and this, and I mean, I think when I go back, we were like the little hustlers in the neighborhood. We used to like build Disneyland in our backyard. Like we'd make like pretend rides, and we had like a one of those spinning wheel things in our backyard. And we had a dirt area and a jungle area. And we would build Disneyland and charge kids a penny to pull them around in our wagon. And a penny a ride, so maybe there was a little bit of that in my blood, but really music didn't really infiltrate my life in a deep way until I was in high school. And we're talking, this is 1979, and I met my first punk rocker. His name was Xerox Clone. What a great name for a punk rocker. Yeah, in a very suburban area east of Los Angeles, and kind of got my first exposure to, call it an alternative lifestyle. It was pretty, straight, like people were listening to Journey and Foreigner, or whatever was big there. And I just wasn't into that stuff. I didn't know there was an alternative, and I kind of got turned on to an alternative. And then by the time I was a freshman in college, which was about an east of LA a ways, I had a van and starting to get turned on to, I guess at that point, new wave, punk, ska, things like that. Started going to LA and being exposed to the music scene that way, and started bringing those bands back out to play events for me out in Pomona. We didn't have the Fox Theater or the Glass House. We only had backyards to do shows then. So so many people, start with a basement show, start doing shows in their backyards. I mean, I was doing the same thing, and just kind of fell into a chance at one point to work with a company called Golden Voice, doing shows in LA, reconnected with Paul Tollett, who ended up doing Coachella, and realizing I had a pretty great opportunity because I was really able to run the shows in a professional manner, because the guy I was working for was the largest distributor of marijuana on the West Coast, and Gary Tovar. So it's a very public story, but now more and more, it was like he let me do the shows right. So many bands weren't used to being treated properly.
Oh, I'm sure.
Back then it was like just getting a little outboard gear, like a compressor or something for the PA. Like if I needed to rent it, I could do it and make. So the band started looking at me like, wow, there's someone here that cares. I've now put it together knowing Gary, like he didn't really care if I was spending the money, where so he allowed me to do really probably professional shows for those bands that were used to playing and blown up PAs and things. And hey, you had a little bit of a catering writer. I could make sure all the bands had some catering. So him giving me those tools allowed me to learn my craft. And, before I knew it, I was, working for all over LA, and I was doing 320 shows a year. Then there's a book that just came out about Lollapalooza. It was the first tour I ever did. I was asked to be the stage manager of Lollapalooza in 1991, which was another crazy. Now that I read that book, I go, wow, all this craziness. My whole life's been surrounded by craziness, but I didn't really notice it going around because I was busy working the shows. My wife was like, they didn't pull you into their craziness. They didn't need another crazy around. They needed someone that was just there to work. They wanted someone when they were, read the first few chapters of that book and you're like, well, whoa, this place was complete chaos. But I've always had to be kind of that, I guess, become that chaos, and the chaos. That was just true chaos. Where like I said, Warped Tour became controlled chaos.
Sure.
From the outside, it looked chaos, but you were all on the inside. You saw how together that was.
Right.
And the illusion of a creative chaos was really great because we all were able to operate within that. I called it get in the Warped Tour tornado.
Yep.
And if you started spinning with that tornado, it was a great ride. But if you resisted it, you got kicked right out into a wall. The promoters and the promoters learned pretty much to, like, when we showed up, once they trusted that we weren't going to destroy the place, they always told me, we just step back and let you run your show, Kevin. We don't get that involved, because if we start resisting it or saying this is how we do it on other shows, it would have never gotten done.
Yeah, well, Warped isn't other shows.
Yeah.
We used to all refer to it as boot camp, and if you could go through and survive Warped Tour, you could do any tour. And I still believe that.
My old band, Texas in July, it's my only Warped experience. Unfortunately, I didn't make it to, me and the Ghost Inside guys didn't make it to Warped 2016. Yeah. So my only experience is the last 2 weeks of Warped 2013. And my band, Texas in July, was in a van and trailer. And it is still my proudest accomplishment to this day that we survived those 2 weeks in a van and trailer. But it's like, if you can make it a summer on Warped and you don't get your ass kicked or thrown off the tour or something, you're prepped to handle basically any kind of touring at that point, I think.
It became that, for the crew people. If you look through it now, looking out who the people that are in demand to work were those people that grew up on Warped Tour.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're the great road managers out here, the production managers. It's funny because, I just had a call with Kent Jameson, who's working with, he was early Warped Tour with No Effects and worked with them. Mm-hmm. But with some of those older bands coming back, they're like, Kent's calling me going, wait, I'm going to work for Dance Hall Crashers Reunion. I'm going to help out with the Interrupters. I'm going to help out with Pennywise. And how can I juggle those set times to make, can you help me out so I can get from stage to stage to work?
Yeah.
Where a lot of production people would say, no way, I'm doing one band. But that mentality was, okay, I'm going to cover 3 bands. That'll help the band save some money. It'll help him make a little extra money by the hustle. I'm sure he's getting paid a little bit from each band. But it's just a working thing. And I had a call with someone this last Friday, and they were really like trying to dig in to, my more back psyche and stuff. And I said, I just get up and work. Mm-hmm. Really what I do. I sometimes wish I could enjoy the party a bit more. There was moments, I think I'd pick and choose a couple nights of summer to go have a great time. But really my role is to get up and work. And I still do that to this day. I get up and the first thing I'm doing is so work is just in my family's blood, my wife and me, we just get up and work. And that's what I do. And I'm so lucky to get to work in something that anyone, wants to go in the music business, you hope you do it for the rest of your life. And when I walked away, never walked away. I was always doing stuff. People don't realize the Warped ended, but I was doing benefit shows and charity shows, my golf tournament.
Yeah.
Talking to managers all week. People would call me for, maybe an input on something. But this, not knowing where, I think we'll end up doing, people are pretty excited. Warped coming back as a brand right now. Will it go on? We think so, maybe, who knows? But you know what? It was fun. It's been fun to come back and kind of show that, I can do it this way. And hopefully we give everyone a great show. And I think we are. I mean, you look at that lineup and right when it comes out, it's piece. I like how we roll it out.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that's resistance.
Absolutely.
You gotta have strong will to do that, and then the people I'm working with even were like, oh my God, you get negative comment. I go, well, if you don't get a negative comment in our world, then you're not successful,
Right. Absolutely.
So true.
you know, and then as that lineup started coalescing, as we were announcing more bands, and then I'm in the background watching those videos getting viewed. And you could take the smallest band on that lineup, and they're not the smallest, but there was a young girl named Meg who's playing in Long Beach. She basically was funny. She was sending me these videos. She was about why should she be on Warped Tour. I listened to her music. She's got no manager. She's got no record label. I put her on. She's going to put on a great show. But I watched her video, and it has 171,000 views for her announced video.
Crazy. That's crazy.
So I can't think that if the 171,000 views, that if she's probably going to have 500,000 people watching her in Long Beach. That could kick off her career. And
absolutely.
Pulling all those numbers on those videos, they've been viewed like 25 million times or something.
That's nuts.
What did your parents think when you decided, hey, I'm going to go into the music business?
It was interesting. My dad's not doing so good right now, but he was in the military. He was a military guy, and then he was a defense contractor. We lived a very stable life. My mother was a bookkeeper, and they kind of were like, it wasn't like, hey, you need to go do. They were for some reason like, you can go find your way.
Interesting.
And, I think anyone in the music industry, everyone always wonders, is that a real job? I think I think they finally accepted it when I introduced him to Rod Stewart one night.
Yeah, I think that'll probably change things a little bit.
I was working a Rod Stewart show, and they got to come and meet Rod Stewart, and I think that all of a sudden was even though I'd been doing tons of cool stuff. Up until the end of Warped Tour, my father was able to. He loved coming down to the shows, and he won't be coming anymore. But they never. Last one he was still. He's kind of going down, but he always said he was really proud of what he saw happen. And too bad he won't be there. I think a lot of people will be asking for him because they were used to him walking around. I know who will be really asking for him is Ice-T.
Oh yeah,
him and Ice-T actually became good friends.
Oh, cool.
When we were on tour. In Europe, we toured Europe together. Ice-T was out on Warped Tour. My dad came, and they hit it off so well. And the next thing I know, my dad's hanging out with him, going out at night. I'm going to bed on the bus because I got to get up in the morning and work. And that carried over to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when we had our exhibit opened, and Ice-T came down for the ceremony. And the next thing, because they had a show in town, and the next thing I know, my dad's going to the show with Ice-T. It's so
unreal.
So I'm pretty sure Ice-T will be asking about my dad when I see him in Long Beach, and I'm super stoked to have him willing to fly in, from his television set, literally getting on a plane, coming in, doing the set, and flying right back. Just to be
wow.
Well, I mean, I think that just further expresses like how much of an impact Warped Tour really has had on like all of these different artists across all genres, big and small, how much of an impact it truly has had. But I want to go back 1 second to, you mentioned that you weren't really into the journeys and all the stuff like that music back then. What do you think it was about like the punk rock music scene and like alternative music scene that really appealed to you and drawed you in? Like what was it that felt like you were getting from that you weren't getting from like the more mainstream stuff?
It was a rawness, the raw emotions of it all, the energy of it all, the just compassion towards it all. You went to those kind of shows, and I only went on those shows a couple times. And I remember one of my worst blind dates ever. I went to a Journey Foreigner, and it was a blind date, and it was just like sitting there, and everyone just reacted to this like explosion or this hit song. It's you go to an August Burns Red show, and it's like it's from the minute and on, and I think that's what I think for people they kind of get stuck maybe in an age of music, but I always say those kids are singing the same way at the front of a barricade right now for whoever it may be, Magnolia Park, Honey Revenge, these type of bands, as we were for the Dead Kennedys or Black Flag, who you guys were probably growing up right around, I'm trying to think, the For Your Strongs or some of those bands, whoever you were going to see, whatever that was, Quicksand or some of those And you were singing those words, and they were as important to you as ever, and you hung on every one of those words, and that's what we've just carried through. It's a live. It's just the rawness of it.
I genuinely appreciate the compliment, but I am a hair older than the 4 Year Strong.
Same, but I'll take it.
Okay, well,
Me too.
Singing along to Bad Religion,
Poison the Well.
Poison the Well. What's up with those guys? They are having a moment again.
You know what?
It's awesome.
That tour they're on right now is crushing, which is awesome to see because they were a massively influential band that I feel like went away way too soon. So it's great to have them back and doing really well.
Growing up here in Southern California, they were a super cool band that never, sometimes it's timing in life, I always say,
Sure.
When you're playing, timing. And then we were actually today talking about Poison the Well, kind of going, wow, they're having a moment. Connected, like all of a sudden, and you never know. And it's about hanging in there. Sometimes it's just about hanging in there, and all of a sudden, wow, everything's different. Something connected in a different way. So maybe that's what's going on with Poison the Well right now.
I feel like there's been this kind of nostalgia thing happening, right, since like COVID hit. Like I feel like COVID hit and everybody started to remember that at one point in time they were an emo kid or a punk kid or a metal kid or whatever. And I feel like that early 2000s like metalcore, hardcore thing is just coming back around and back in style again. And I think that, them going out and playing that specific record is definitely helping, but they put out a new song and it's great. And it's like, they really are having a full moment again. It's awesome.
Where did the concept and idea of Warped Tour come from? Did it start as a single show, or did you always say, I'm taking it out and I'm going to do this thing across the country?
I've been working on Lollapalooza, watching the show, watching the crowds, watching that. We were also doing events like up in the mountains with snowboarding and border cross, boarding for breast cancer, board aid, some of this other stuff we were all doing. And then we did a show in Orange County here, Board No C, where it was skateboarding and music. So I was kind of already doing a lot of action sports and music. And then I overheard someone say the X Games were coming. And I asked them, and they said it was going to be on television, and this was all going to, and I go, oh man, if I don't do this for myself, I'll be working for someone else, I bet,
Sure.
And at that point I was thinking, well, maybe it was time to get that real job. That real job we were just talking about earlier with your parents. We just had Sierra. I think you know my daughter, Sierra, some of you.
Yeah.
She works with Avril now. And it was maybe time to go figure out that real job that you got to check every 2 weeks, that there was a little more stability or supposed to stability. We don't know if it was or not. And, and see where it all goes, and I just decided to go do it myself. And really it was going to be for 1 year. It was like, go out 1 year, do it all together and kind of see what's out there. Maybe I'll go run a summer camp or go run a youth program, come home and on weekends. And it's a pretty good run.
I would say
25-year run.
But at what point did you realize, like, okay, this is something here. This is really special. Or did you ever?
Today's show is sponsored by Bestronix Pro Audio. Let's be real. Your rig is only as solid as the cables running through it. Whether you're touring the world or building out your dream setup at home, you need quality cables that won't let you down. That's where Bestronix Pro Audio comes in. BTPA specializes in full tour rig builds, custom cabling solutions, and if you're the hands-on DIY type, they've got bulk cable and connectors so you can wire up your own setup exactly how you want it. Everything they make is road-tested, built to last, and trusted by the pros. And because you're part of the Late for Load-In crew, BTPA is giving you 10% off your order. Just use the code LFLI10 at checkout and save on the best cables in the business. So don't let bad cables kill your tone or ruin your set. Hit up btpa.com, lock in that discount, and keep your rig dialed and ready for the road. What's up, Road Crew? We want to take a second to tell you about an awesome program for music professionals called Sight for Sound from the team over at Nevin Eyewear. If you're out on the road, whether you're a touring musician, a crew member, or working at a venue, this is for you. Nevin is offering free prescription eyewear to the people who keep the music world spinning. We're talking high-quality frames, legit prescription lenses, and zero strings attached. Just solid gear to help you see clearly while you're out there doing what you do best.
Nevin was founded by John Strauss, a guy who came up in the metal and hardcore scene, so he knows exactly how tough and thankless ridiculous this life can be. Sight for Sound is his way of giving back to the scene that shaped him, supporting the people behind the music with something as simple and vital as clear vision. As Chris and I know directly from working in the music industry for the majority of our adult lives, we know there are no benefits or retirement funds, so this support is vital. All you have to do is head over to nevineyewear.com, fill out a quick form, and if you qualify, your new glasses are on the house. That's it.
It's an awesome way to take care of the folks who take care of the music, so go check it out, and hopefully we'll see you out there on the road with perfect vision. We all know that music isn't just sound, it's connection, it's healing, it's everything when you're feeling lost. That's why Late for Load-In is partnering with Heart Support, the nonprofit founded by Jake Lurs of August Burns Red to bring real, free peer support straight to you.
Are you feeling down and need someone to talk to? Just text Late for Load-In to 1-512-647-2871 and get connected with someone who understands, someone who gets how music pulls us through the hardest times. It's totally free, totally judgment-free, and 100% about supporting you through the music we love.
And if you're in a good place right now, you can be part of healing the scene. Heart Support is looking for volunteer repliers, fans like you who want to help others through the power of music. You'll be trained to support fellow fans who are struggling and join a community built on connection, mental health, and the music that keeps us going.
And again, if you need support, text Late for Load-In to the number 1-512-647-2871. If you want to be support, sign up at heartsupport.com/volunteer. Together, we're making this scene stronger.
Today's episode is brought to you by you, our incredible listeners and patrons over at patreon.com/LFLIpod. By joining, you'll get early access to episodes, exclusive monthly giveaways featuring rare memorabilia from Josh and I's time on the road, and access to our patron-only music review and reaction live streams. But that's not all. You'll also get into the Late for Load-In Road Crew Discord, where you can connect with fellow fans, submit guest requests, and drop your questions for the show. The best part? It's just $1 a month. If you love what we're doing and want to help keep the show rolling, head over to patreon.com/LFLIpod and join the road crew today. Now, back to the show.
I think it, for me, it was what legitimized us in a weird way, even though we were a very eclectic lineup, was it kind of got known as punk rock summer camp. But when Pennywise and NoFX came on, that kind of legitimized it in 1996 with that kind of crowd. And, it got labeled punk rock summer camp. But what is punk rock? It's such a broad term in my mind. So those people who live, it's in your heart, punk's in your heart. It's not how you look or what you play. It's just, so all of a sudden it just gathered these people with that punk rock mentality and became a caravan going down the road. Never took it for granted, never expected that we'd be doing it the following year. It was like, but then it got into this routine where you're like, by the time I'm unloading the trucks from one summer, we're already routing the next summer. And that might have been some of the mistake. Maybe we were taking it for granted, as well as other people, like, okay, just get back to work on Warp. Get back to work on Warp. You never know. You have we had a rough year in 2017. And it was just a lot of combinations of things came together. You're always going to have anyone, you're looking, tell me an athlete that has 25 great seasons.
Absolutely.
Maybe Judge will have it, 25 good years. But, we had a bad year. But I'd already started thinking that I was starting to lose some of the energy it was starting to become a little bit of a grind. And so by preparing to end it at 25 years worked out, since we had a pandemic, would have put me into bankruptcy. If we were going out in 2020, I would have been bankrupt. So a pandemic, I guess, decision, very lucky decision.
Funny how things work, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a lot of work to put together a lineup like that every year. So many bands, like the scene is like forever evolving and changing, and like 1 week one band's hot, 1 week they're not. Like what was the process of curating the lineup for this behemoth of a tour that it ended up being?
For
that became a very big piece to like everybody's puzzle of planning their year for touring, was trying to get on Warp. So you've probably got managers throwing 900 bands at you a day. How did you go about whittling that down?
It got tough though, because I'd get calls from band people.
Yeah.
And that, it's nice to hear from you. But when they're saying like, wow, they're not going to push our album unless we get Warped. And I was like, that put a lot of pressure on.
Yeah.
And, I was pretty much like to say yes. I was like, yeah, let's try that. Let's try this. But it almost got to the point where we had too many bands, too much out there. I used to have a lot of, September, October, we're like living here, and it was called, it's better, we live in Altadena, but it was better to call it the pilgrimage to Pasadena. It's the only time like certain agents go west of, or like east of La Brea Avenue, that it's like they actually had to come into our backyard. Like we'd have these backyard gatherings where I would start meetings in the day, and people would come and have whiteboards, and we'd listen to music, Hopeless, Fearless, Epitaph. Everyone would come here because I had no time to drive around and check in with everyone. Now we can use Zoom a little bit more, but it was like a big gathering in our backyard, and some meetings would run into the next meetings. And it was really fun because, when you had, Lewis here and then Bob from Fearless would meet them, and they'd just start talking about things. And then, we'd end up barbecuing, and people would end up hanging out, and bands would be showing up, and my wife would feel safe if they had mohawks, those must be a band dropping off demo tapes, it's only people that would feel safe with a crew of guys walking down a driveway with mohawks, But we knew that was our world, and it was really kind of fun. And I'd sit there with the whiteboards in my office, coloring in different colors of sounds that I would label each sound to make sure that try to make it eclectic and a mix, and then put it all into an iPod back then. Now you'd put it on shuffle, and then just kind of listen to the music and walk around and see how it sounded if it was in a festival. Like, you wanted the stages to sound different. You wanted different things. Then I wanted to throw a twist in there that might have been like a Katy Perry or a Wallpaper or K-Flay or Big Chocolate. You'd always have some of those twists in Warped Tour because it would break that sound up a little bit. Sonically, the bands sound better if you don't have a lot of sonically the same type of bands.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It's just such an undertaking that I think that most people who attended the festival every summer probably didn't really appreciate all the time and thought they had to go into curating something so potentially chaotic.
They were paying their $35 to come and be entertained.
True. That is a valid point.
They don't give a shit what we're doing behind the scenes. That's okay. That's not their role. I don't care, how the groceries get on the shelf. I thank the guys who are stocking them, but it's typical life. It's our job.
Sure.
Our job is to do a good job, and did the best you can under circumstances. We had X amount of budget to book those bands. That was a very important thing to, I like how it's like, I got people complaining about the ticket price of Warped Tour this year. It was, $149 for a 2-day festival. And as we see, some festivals are becoming $400 for a day now for things.
Right.
It's easy when you could just throw the money if the people are going to pay. But I also felt like we were heading into an economically tricky time when I brought Warped. When I decided to do this a year, in July, I go, next year is going to be an economically tricky time. It's coming out of pandemic money. We all had extra cash. We were feeling like there was demand to go get entertained, to go all this. So a lot of this thought has been going on for a few years. And then I go, wait, this is going to be changing next year. Not expecting it this drastic,
Right.
For the reasons that that we live in a whiplash society based on one person's tweet or mention on television or whatever. Opening Alcatraz. I was planning on going on a tour of Alcatraz. Now that they're going to make it a prison again today, I really just talked to someone like, I want to go on the tour of Alcatraz. I don't know, maybe,
you better go do it soon.
Do it quick because that just threw that out the window today. But we're all but I really believe that we're economically looking at, because I think 90% of the people are getting priced out of going to festivals. And if we can bring it back for them, there's going to be other festivals that people can go to, and they're great. I don't have, but Warped Tour is a place where I think 90% of the people can come have a good couple days. We're working with all our food vendors to have some sort of discount menu pricing, like we used to do those meal vouchers on Warp, because I think this summer is going to be a summer where people are looking at it going, tight. We all know we have, it's reality. Things are costing more. The credit card bills are up. But like, if we can give people, I want to wear them out. Like I plan on that's week. Everyone's like, when does the light? I go, okay, you got to come early. It's Warped Tour. You better be there at 9:00 in the morning. I'm going to run you around in circles until 10:00 at night and do it for 2 days in a row. And then hopefully you'll sleep for a week and a half and make your money stretch out longer.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Man, talk about things getting expensive. I was pulling some bus quotes today for the home team, and like bus prices, man,
are you budgeting what, $2,200 a day or $2,000 a day almost?
I pulled a one today it was for 40 days, I think, and it was like $112,000.
Wow.
I
And
think
that was just a cold email from our TM to,
That's almost $3,000 a day.
man, I was like, I pulled one of my old bus quotes from 2014 and we were paying $300 a day. And I was like, what the
I'm
fuck
pretty
is
sure
happening?
when we did the co-headline run with Under Oath in 2023, I'm pretty sure our bus for that summer for like 4.5 or 5 weeks was just about about $100,000.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy.
It hurts, man. It hurts.
It's insane.
Which is interesting. I know the bandwagon, which is really hard. Is you go? I rode in a bandwagon last summer.
I know. I remember seeing you. How was it?
I made it. Of course, I can do it. But as I say, get the bandwagon experience. I tell my students at school, I go, "There's a vehicle called the bandwagon, but if you want to know what it, go rent a U-Haul." Throw like your bunk beds from your dorm in with all your crap, and have your friends drive you around and hit a few railroad tracks.
100%.
That'll give you the same experience, and then you'll be ready to go in a bandwagon for the summer.
Absolutely.
But people are having to make those decisions right now.
It's tough.
The bandwagons aren't even really cheaper than a bus anymore, though. Everything is they're like almost the same price as buses now. It's crazy.
The day rate is, but they're cheaper because you save on the driver and you save on the hotels and you save on all that.
But not as
stuff.
much as you used to, though.
No, not at all.
So it's
not
crazy.
At all.
It's crazy how everything's just going up.
It's scary.
And
really.
that's hard because you can't charge the fans more.
No, right.
The
So
fans,
where does the money come from?
Can't afford those big ticket prices right now. We're seeing it.
Absolutely.
The tours that are doing well, and we're at this weird point inflection in our industry right now that we're just going to have to now. This is the point where you really have to. We've been through these times before, where those people have to be cognizant. So, for me, it was like this would be a time to come back and give a great value for the day, and then make sure that we give you as much as we possibly can. And you could make it work, but everyone had to work. All the bands on the Warped Tour, I think it wasn't. We paid fair, but if economically something didn't work out with a band and our model, it was no problem. No one was just, there was no disrespect meant, but even with this one was just so like, okay, this is how much we have to spend. What can we go do? I know some bands help, and other ones just, it didn't fit. No problem. It's just the world. It's just, ultimately it's just, we love our world. We love hanging out with each other, but it comes down to business sometimes. And sometimes their business model doesn't fit with mine and vice versa. And you can't really change that. Trust me, I would love to have Fugazi on a Warped Tour show. And I see Ian, but I can't do a $6 ticket and he couldn't play a Warped Tour at a $20 ticket or whatever,
Right.
We both have our same passion and want to treat the people the same way. It just sometimes, economics, it is still, we have to be fiscally responsible to whatever we're doing.
Yeah, totally. At what point did Vans come into the equation of being like the title sponsor and partner in Warped Tour?
They came in 1996. I did it on 1995 Warped Tour. And then 1996, I was fortunate enough to have a meeting as my ex-partner was talking to Calvin Klein. Can you imagine the Calvin Klein Warped Tour in 1990?
Not so much.
Probably wouldn't have flown. And luckily was able to make that deal away. And we pretty much, I went down to Vans and they were kind of interviewing me to, I think, help them with their amateur skate program more than my music festival. It's a moment in time where I had to convince them that no one's going to watch amateur skating unless you're part of my very successful music festival, which wasn't that successful at that point. But that grew into a great relationship and, working with Steve Van Doren, who all of you know, and Christy and that crew. And, when I was able to go down there and say, hey, I'm thinking about bringing this back, they were very excited. And, Steve was super excited. Steve Van Doren's like, he's making a new big blow up right now. We're making a giant size blow up for the band's schedule.
Yes. Amazing. Yeah.
But we were making everything a little bigger for these crowds that are going to be.
Yeah. Fair.
He's going to be out there, just, making shoes for the bands and going to be doing this thing. And we're bringing in the big vert ramp from the X Games.
No way.
Summer, yeah. So all the skaters are coming back, and we're bringing the Nitro Circus freestyle motocross. We're going to have at the shows.
That's awesome.
So far I don't have any midget wrestlers, so maybe I'll have to get a call from Deliberate. You
still got a month.
Yeah, you can make some phone calls.
Still got a month.
So we'll figure it out. But I think there's going to be a lot to to entertain and keep people, excited. It's exciting to get the companies involved again. And, we did, pivot to Ghost Energy. They showed a lot of enthusiasm and for this music. The owner, like I went to a meeting with him, and he just starts talking to me about all the times his mom dropped him off at the Warped Tour, and he came in and did this, and this, and he showed a real thing to help us come out and bring the brand back in a fresh way. So it's a lot of new faces, and there'll be some familiar ones.
Does it ever feel weird to go into a meeting like that? Like, obviously the meeting was about, I'm assuming about working with the festival this year, but with a company completely unrelated to music, does it feel weird to go into a meeting and hear about the impact that Warped Tour's had on somebody's life?
I did that kind of my whole life,
Yeah.
and it goes back to sometimes when I was trying to convince brands to come and support this project called Warped Tour, and those brand managers, you have to figure back then. I started Warped Tour when I was 31, so it was kind of like and they're all like, well, I don't know, I think we might go sponsor Lollapalooza or something, and they were like in their 30s or 40s, and I go, hey, you guys, you got to realize the kids aren't going to Lollapalooza; they're at my new thing called the Warped Tour. I go, the Warped Tour, Lollapalooza is cool, but the last time we were cool, you were in the front row drinking beers with your friends, and I was on stage with long hair, cut off overalls, Doc Martens, chains around my neck, and a cowboy hat, and running that stage. That was the last time I was cool. Now let's talk business. Now let's talk how you're going to go meet the kids that are buying your brands. So I kind of learned how to straddle both worlds, and I think that's what's important for me, to go explain the lifestyle, that people with tattoos are not dangerous,
right?
That people with green hair are creative, that this is a world that don't be intimidated by, embrace, because if you can embrace some of the things they're involved with and that they support, they're really going to become loyal to you.
Where did that mentality come from? Like, at what point did you understand that and not be afraid of those type of people?
I don't know. I just look at people, and pumps, and maybe that's, sometimes, they say, well, I just look at, we're all people. You should be able to just be straight with them.
Mm-hmm, sure.
And so many times, some people say, and be kind, kindness can be looked at as a weakness.
Absolutely.
My wife is never, I always try to I try to be kind. I think if anything, not everyone's going to like me. That's okay. That's all right. Well, most people, when they sit and get to know me, they'll respect what I've done, or they'll understand where I'm coming from. It's, you get hurt when someone hates you online or something, and they go, wait a second, that person never sat and talked. I used to challenge, like, come talk to me. I'd meet the kids at the back. Some people didn't know I'd meet those kids at the back gate of Warped Tour. I'd say, come down in the morning and talk to me. And they'd usually say, I thought you were going to jump us or something like that. I'm like, no, I just want you can make a judgment when you meet someone face to face and sit.
Absolutely.
That's how punk rock, we used to have that, where there was those, we might not agree with things, but we'll sit and discuss them. Then as we got into this world of the internet, where people could just go on social media and post something about someone without talking to them or something, we're just a microcosm of society as a whole right now, where if you put 98% of the people in the room, we'd find a common ground. But
absolutely.
Right now we have these fringes that are controlling the dialogue of society, and we don't have that. Some people would get mad at me how can you have different opinions in the parking lot? Well, that's what you need to do. You need to and let people formulate their opinions. I would never allow someone who preached hate or racism or anything such as that. But I also believe we can have different opinions in this world.
The art of discourse has been lost over the past handful of years, and it's becoming increasingly more frustrating and difficult just to live everyday life, because obviously no one's ever going to agree on 100% of things. It's pretty frustrating for sure.
No, but I think people are actually looking for a place where they can come together and have that community sense. Now, maybe it is too far gone, but I seriously don't believe it is. And I seriously think that maybe this summer, through these few shows, we can bring some people together that will find some common ground, like-minded, get involved in the nonprofits, get involved in, or maybe find their new music that they love. and they found it because they were walking by a stage thinking that they might want to listen to that band. And we all know that you'd walk by a stage on Warped Tour and you'd hear something and turn around and go, what is that?
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
And that's what I hope for. I hope that, it's not going to work, for everyone, but I bet a big majority of the people are going to walk out of there with something new in their lives.
It's one of my favorite things about what you're doing, and this is a little bit of a pivot, but what you're doing with summer school. And, I had the home team on last drive, if not for me on this year, and I'm personally happy to be a part of the first 2 years. But it's, to me, this generation's the closest that they're going to get to what Warped Tour was and what you guys are trying to build with that sense of community and the sense of equality with the set times, and all the bands rotate and all that kind of good stuff. Like, that was the thing about Warped Tours, is the biggest bands would play first some days, and that's just the way that it was. And we all learned to just I got to the point where I liked playing early because we would be done early, and then we'd just get to hang out the rest of the day.
Like we're friends and people. You saw that, Josh. And one of the things that inspired me to bring Warp back was going out in those few summer school or dates and going, these bands, given that opportunity to cooperate, look how much they cooperate. It only took a couple of days, and they were all cooperating. It was just became like they'd never been exposed to that. And we only learned from exposure, and
100%.
All their pretenses went away within a few days out there.
It's because you get accustomed to a certain thing in a certain way, and that's all you know. But that's why, man, that's the thing. And I feel this like sense of, I don't know what the word is, but like this sense of almost emptiness for this generation that they don't
old
get
man Josh yelling at the sky again.
They don't get to experience that. I will say this, and I will stand and die on this, that Warped Tour, without Warped Tour, not only would I have the career that I have, but I wouldn't be the person that I am without that tour. We learned and experienced so much throughout those summers that you can, and then we were fortunate enough to do Mayhem in between. And I mean, that was like what we used to call college Warped Tour. And man, it changed our lives.
I do want to preface it. The one thing when I say everyone's going to walk out with something new, we all know they're going to walk out with probably a sunburn, a new sunburn.
That definitely is going to happen.
That was always the fun part about Warped Tour, was I'd watch it when you guys would be out there the first few weeks. Security would ask you for a pass. By about 2.5 weeks in, no one got asked for anything because you were burnt. You had this weird shade of dark and dirt. It was a mix of all of that. And it was like, and then if someone walked in that hadn't, like, they could tell, like, oh, do you have a pass? Well, obviously, wait, you couldn't.
Yeah.
It was
absolutely.
We're it'll be great. I'm sure I'll see you guys out there.
You absolutely will. How difficult was it when you were like, all right, we knew that it was coming to an end, and when you had to actually hang it up, like, and put it on hiatus? How difficult was that?
I was ready. I was
really
more than ready. We brought my van up. I had my Sprinter van up in San Francisco. And I'll never forget, we're leaving with my wife out of the parking lot after the last day. I said, I've done everything I can with this project and more. Plus, I had already started teaching. I was going to be teaching within a very short period. I'd already been teaching a year, and I'm now going, So I think it's important when you wind something up that you're like a keystone in your life. A lot of people are doing that now, and I have friends that are wrapping things up. As long as you have stuff to look forward to or things you can do, you'll be okay. But if you sit there and you all of a sudden you go from the super high, fast-paced lifestyle of this, and you were known really for one big thing in your life, whether it's a magazine or a manager or label, and then all of a sudden that identity, part of your identity, goes away. Have other things to fill that up behind, or be completely comfortable with walking away from it.
What about the following summer when Warped Tour didn't happen?
My God, I went on vacation for the first 30 years. I mean,
Josh is looking for an emotional answer, and Kevin's like, "What do you mean? I got a break."
Actually, we didn't really get to go on vacation because we had a pandemic.
Yeah. Oh, right.
By next summer, this whole summer but we did take our van out, and we would go like see people, like, sit out in our van in their front yard and talk to them and drive to another city, or say, hey, we're going to camp out in your front yard and move on the next day, or see you in a campground, see you outside somewhere. So the grand plans of that that next summer where I had a giant garden that actually grew during the summer and didn't just need the weeds, because I had so much time to work on it. But we have gotten to go on some great trips during the summer times, traveling in our van. It's been fun to, call up Blossom Amphitheater one time and say, hey, I want to come by and see all the people that are, can we camp out in your backstage? And in the Lambert and Little Big Town, and got to camp out. We were the only vehicle left in the whole place. They let us stay there, No, it's been good. It's okay. And now coming back, and we'll get to spend, but being in DC now, I'll be actually in DC for like 10 days. That's going to be weird.
That's wild. I'm bummed I'm not going to be home for that. We're going to be on tour in Europe, and I want nothing more than to be home so that I could attend.
You there with Volbeat or?
No, we'll be doing the Euro Fest circuit and then coming back and heading right out with Volbeat almost immediately. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I have a potentially selfish question. So I know that you mentioned it was 2017. You said was a rough year for Warped. Is that right? Yeah. So I'm assuming that played into the decision to bring the tour to an end. But how did you know it was time? Was it just that that you had the bad year, or did you just feel it? Because I always wonder if I will ever know when it's the right time for me to call it quits. I don't think there ever will be a time, to be honest, because Josh and I started playing in a band together when I was 10, and I've been doing this for more than half of my life, and so I feel like there'll never be a time where I'm done. But I just wonder if I'll ever know. You know what I mean? When it's time to put it behind me.
I was thinking about it. By the 2016, I go 25 years. It'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
We were kind of rolling along, and things were good, and they were all, the shows were great. And then we just had that really rough 2017, bad weather, dealing with the internet, just, all some bands, instead of coming and talk to me, were vocalizing on the internet. It was just, and I go, this is just not where I want to be, because I was working so hard to try to make it, pull it together. And it just wasn't working. And then I go, you know what? Maybe I'm trying too hard. Maybe, by trying to bring new bands and all these young people, maybe I just need to go out and make this a really fun, semi-nostalgia run in 2018. And it was only bands I want that I know that were responsible, that could handle it, crew people that were professional and can work with their bands and handle it. And we had our second biggest summer ever when we said goodbye, I guess numbers wise, and then wrap it up with those big shows. And we went out on top. I think we went, couldn't have gone out in a better way.
Yeah.
Just, big ending, put an exclamation, get through your rough. If I quit after a rough summer, then people said, oh, you just quit because of rough summer.
Sure.
And I said, no, there's still something here. I can pull it all together for this one. I'm going to be a little selfish with it. I'm going to run it a little bit more like a benign dictatorship and not a consortium of people that, you can't run things. I teach people all the time. You can't run things by committee a lot of times. You have to be able to have some strong person that can make a decision. And I just went back and did it the way I had always done, and regain my own personal self-confidence in some ways, because that was a little bit of a rattling summer, to be honest. And I was a little rattled, and I just said, okay, I still have it, and went out and, and just that summer was fantastic, the 2018, and then those big shows in 2019 and the Rock Hall, and went out, and everyone's going, how can you quit when you're on top? Why not?
Right.
Yeah.
It's when you leave a poker table, they say, wait, you can't leave, you're winning.
Right.
Watch me.
Leave when you're winning.
Yeah, that's the best way to go.
I mean, it's also just leaving on your own terms, like you said, not letting that bad summer be the thing that put it to bed. You got to do it your own way.
Yeah, and then it doesn't look like you ran from it.
Yep.
No, and now, I use that as a great teaching lesson. Here's all the things that happened this summer and how you readapt and go forward, and you can do it. Don't give up if you have a bad moment.
Do you remember when there was a certain somebody, I probably shouldn't say his name, I'm not going to. Do you remember when the certain somebody stole the bike from Google and painted it black?
Oh, God, Terror.
I think it might have been, I think he was doing Terror and E-Tid.
Oh, okay. It was a sound guy.
Oh, it was a sound guy for sure.
Yeah, I was totally, did you heard about when I got them all back though, right?
Oh yeah.
That was the best, because they took all the bikes, and then I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of. But then I saw that they painted them black, And I was like, oh, that's complete, like,
We would
straight
never
up.
know.
So then when I went around, that brought them all into the production office in Ventura. And I said, all of them have a chip inside. They're tracking you, Google, right? And you have to take these bikes to this address in Santa Monica because we had a day off the next day and on the way to Phoenix. So they had to waste the whole day, and they all went by, and they were at the guard shack, and the guys go, what the hell you want me to do with these bikes? And they're like, there's a chip in them. We have to return them. He goes, you fell for that? You know?
Wait, that wasn't true. I didn't know that wasn't true. I've heard that story and thought that was the truth.
No, it was just, sometimes you got to learn how to think on your feet. And I guess I could have yelled at him or whatever, but I got him back by basically ruining their day off and making him take a whole day to go to Santa Monica.
That's so good.
You know what? That's what they deserve, in my opinion.
And I got a good laugh out of it afterwards. They got a good laugh out of it, but
Was Google pissed? I assume they were pissed.
They didn't care. They were
happy.
happy.
That's pennies to them.
Actually, the venue and everyone was laughing. They were going, thank God you guys stole all those bikes. We hate those things. So.
That was the day Lincoln Park played in Ventura.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah. Special day.
Yeah, it was very special. It was awesome.
Now we've talked about what, led to the end. What was the main inspiration behind bringing it back? Because I don't know if there's any truth to this at all, right? But I remember seeing Franz from Attila tweeting all the time about how, Kevin, let me buy the Warped Tour name, I'll bring it back, blah 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 blah, all the time.
How many people offered to buy the Warped Tour name?
A lot of people.
I bet.
I can imagine. So what ultimately, what made it feel like it was time?
Just started getting the energy that my students at school, working with these students and thinking what they might be looking for. Watching some of the bands, a lot of bands were asking me, hey, it'd be fun to do something. It's just, and it felt right to me, actually. It felt like, okay, this could be, like, I feel like I have the energy for it. It takes a ton of work to do. But I have I'm feeling pretty healthy right now. Let's not see what, and then see if anyone's going to respond. Let's just see if anyone.
They responded. All right.
I think they've responded.
Yeah. It's kind of in the back of your mind. Like maybe no one's going to care. And that's okay.
Sure.
Too. That would be okay. I guess, we'd try, and okay, we did stop at the right time, and it did. The response was good. Very good. Look, if there's going to be some people that don't like, but the lineup's great. I think that anyone who goes to that show that enjoys music is going to have a great day. And they're,
absolutely.
And we're going to give it, and then like I say, Warped Tour is not for everyone, but it was for the smart kids. Because it was always for the smart kids. They had to figure out what time they got to get because on the way there, they got to make sure they have their canned food and their friends have their stuff, and they have to be organized, and then they have to come in and figure out their day. No one's going to feed you the information. Like, it's like, you're going to have to come and explore the day and challenge yourself. Warped Tour is a challenging day. Now we're going to challenge you for 2 days, and you're going to come and you're going to just be in it. Just let yourself go into the middle of it all.
It's so exciting, and it's crazy when you realize the impact that it had, not only on us as insiders, but even I was in Panama City this weekend with my son's soccer team. We had a travel, he plays travel soccer, and we were over there. And one of the dads, actually his coach, he's the assistant coach. He's one of the kids' dads. He asked me, he's probably mid-40s. He's an accountant for a bunch of car dealerships, like so far removed from our world. He's like, man, are you going to any of the Warped Tours? And I was like, yeah, I'll be at all of them. And then he said, man, do you need a +1 to Orlando? And I'm just thinking, like, you're so far away from our world, and it impacted you. It's just, it was just.
You see, I got people, Homeland Security guys in DC, and they wear long sleeves, and they roll up their sleeves and show me their tattoos.
Yeah. And it's incredible.
Sheriffs, I get ex-sheriffs from down in Orlando who want to come to the show, and now they do insurance fraud investigation. So,
what does that feel like from an idea that just came about, and you just said earlier that you put this together in your garage, and like, what does that feel like to sit back and reflect on all that?
It touched a lot of people. which is
It really did.
some way. And you don't know where that lives lately in someone's body or something. But I think us coming out at this point brought a lot out for some people, like that weird memory, that moment in time. Like, are they going to recapture it? I don't know. Is it going to be different? Or they just want to come back and go, wow, this is like, maybe come with some friends and go, this is what I used to go to. Come check it out. This thing was a time, and then we'll get back, get ready for school, have hopefully a nice vacation. Maybe at the end of the summer, we'll figure something out and get back into school and see where, and then I got to come. Then I'm coming down to Orlando in November, which will be nice.
I think it would be rude if we didn't figure out a fishing trip.
Oh, I've got it in the back of my mind. Trust me.
Okay. All right. Just making sure.
Well, we'll start to slowly wind this down now, since we've been talking your ear off for a while. We have 2 segments that we like to end the show with. One we call our Road Crew Meet and Greet, and it's where people who are part of our Patreon can submit some questions for our guests. And so I have a handful of questions here from our guests, or from our Patreon community, if that's okay.
Okay.
Corey wants to know, are there any future plans on bringing Warped Tour back to a full traveling tour? Is it going to
you can't say that.
Stay as spot shows? Yeah.
No, we talked about the cost of tour buses.
Right.
Yeah.
No, when I had 21 of those were mine on the road, and we were just talking about almost $3,000 a day. So a little bit of math.
You're in trouble.
There.
You're in big trouble.
Yeah.
Corey, sorry, but
you better travel to one of the single dates.
Yeah. I'd rather have you guys travel to me, pay you a little bit more money, cover a date on your tour, and because the infrastructure of Warped Tour costs so much to move around. It was between the generators, the stages, that was we spent a lot of money on that. We subsidized that tour of $6 to $7 million of sponsorship a year just to keep that on the road.
I don't know how you did $35 tickets. I don't know how it's even possible.
Yeah.
Different time.
I wish we could, but until we just couldn't move everything down the road the way we used to.
MFox919 says he's helped so many big artists in this scene get their footing and begin their journey to the top. Which artist has he kept his finger on the pulse with the most post Warped Tour?
Good question.
Kept my finger on the pulse.
I guess which career have you followed the closest since Warped Tour?
Well, sometimes some of those people you just can't help. Eminem or Katy Perry, right. They're going to be in the news and the things. But, for me, it's those consistent bands that are still going and working hard, like the Less Than Jakes of the world, and those kind of bands that have now built 30-year careers, 35 years careers. I sometimes wonder, what you guys are doing or what's going on with Every Time I Die? Are they, they're not really, where they're doing it, Bouncing Souls, I'd always love to know where, some of those those bands that don't get all the press and everything, and how they make their careers continue on, now 20, 30, sometimes 40 years almost, some of these bands are coming up on.
Antifrost asks, did he ever expect Warped Tour to be as iconic as it became to be? And how did the final version of Warped Tour compare to his original vision for it?
Really, it evolved. Warped Tour was always supposed to feel like a backyard party in some way. Something that is accessible. If you rode a skateboard at the beginning, you felt you could get up on those ramps. If you played in a band, it was simple. You could have access to this world. The breakdown between the bands and the fans was very little. I tried to keep that as much as possible throughout the whole run. You'd see those video bands walking through the crowds, even that last year, to go to their boots, and I tried not to change it, but I tried to evolve with it a bit. That makes sense. It had to evolve, so we had more nonprofits. We had more relevant nonprofits to maybe what was going on in the times. Voice for the Innocent, Save for Scene, some of these other organizations that were requested. I wasn't an expert in this, so I had to go find people to come and be part of the community and help. But really, it still felt like a backyard party almost, in a way.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Totally. James wants to know, what band does he wish he got for Warped Tour but never could? Is there an artist that you chased down and you're just never able to make it happen?
I tried to get the Ramones to refer and play on the Warped Tour.
But that would have been awesome.
I was trying to do an all Ramones all the time stage.
Okay.
in all their wacky bands that they, Marky Ramone Intruders, and just all these bands that they would be in. And I'd say, you guys can have the stage all day. I don't care what goes on. I need 30 minutes of the Ramones at the end, Joe Strummer was supposed to play the Warped Tour the year he died. That would have been really cool for me,
Oh, yeah,
later on,
awesome.
I guess 21 Pilots thought would have been cool. I think they would have had a great time out on Warped Tour.
Yeah,
definitely.
Did they never did the tour at any point?
They played Warped Tour.
They did AP Awards.
Yeah, they yeah.
In the middle of Warped.
Yeah,
the first year, I think.
I think they wanted to jump in the bus and go with us at that night while we were all heading off to. I
bet.
But most everyone played.
Yeah, I would imagine that to be the case.
I think
sure.
There's a big research project going on right now, and they're up to like 3,244 bands played Warped Tour.
Wow.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Crazy.
The last one is Rocking Tika. Which band did he personally want to have in the lineup this year?
And that might be tough for you to say, just because you don't want to play favorites.
I mean, I've got a band together, and I hope a lot of people may not know that you'd gone, but there was a band called the Dance Hall Crashers.
Yeah.
The Dance Hall Crashers. It took me 25 years of telling them they need to get back together. And in October, I was down at us at City Limits, and Elise is a good friend of mine, the singer. And it was the first time she didn't say no right away. And to get them back together it was a big coup. Like for me, I can't, people are gonna be blown away. Two amazing girl singers in this ska band, kind of a fun ska band, but they have some great things they sing about, that they're going to be doing a reunion at Warped Tour. I think the people that get to know them or are in the know and know them are super excited, because now they're inspired to play and they're getting invited to play all kinds of festivals. I wanted the Interrupters. I wanted so many bands out there, but I think we got a great mix. You can't go wrong with the Day to Remember playing at Warped Tour. They bring it,
every time.
They bring it every time. Having Avril Lavigne play her first Warped Tour. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Really cool.
That's pretty cool. Trust me, I tried way back when to get her to play Warped Tour, but management wouldn't give me her old management wouldn't give me 2 seconds, because they said she wasn't from this crowd. And I said, yes, she was.
She's like quintessential from the Warped crowd.
She was pop back then,
Sure.
Her managers just didn't think Warped Tour was relevant, and it's cool to have her playing at that show.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that, you could all say, with Falling in Reverse is always a little, there's always, Ronnie just, I know him as a person, and I've seen him sit with those kids with cancer and those kids that we bring to our shows and spend a lot of time with them. So I've seen both sides of him. The public persona is one thing, but I've actually seen some of the things, and he paid his dues. He went to prison. He did and I've given a lot of people second chances in my life. And,
yeah, totally.
If they really screw up, they're going to be out, or they're going to pay the price. But I do believe it's a world of redemption too, in a way, and he's going to bring a great show.
Absolutely,
100%.
Yeah, I think he's a fucking genius. I love the guy.
Man, he's like the David Lee Roth of our generation.
Yeah.
Yes.
In a way.
Yes.
Good.
Definitely.
Ultimate show person. I don't know. I just, then you throw in the Sublimes, and you throw in, they were on the 1995 one. I'm throwing out all these bands. She's asked for one band.
No,
and then you got these younger bands, and I keep, the Chandler Laytons, the Taylor Acorns, the Lolos. There's such a great contingent of, home teams playing some shows with us.
Mm-hmm.
There's all these little young bands that, man, I hope they kill it so I can say, hey, you want to move up a stage next year?
Right.
Right.
And you as managers hope then their money's going to get a little better.
Absolutely.
It's always going to be great. But then, they know they're not going to be able to come and take this show lightly. They better be on stage, right out to that merch booth, saying hello to everyone, signing every autograph, because those will be your lifelong fans. Those will be the ones you beat out of that parking lot, will be there with you forever.
Absolutely. All right. And then we're going to go into our last segment right now. We call it our day sheet. It's just a rapid fire round. So I'm going to toss some questions at you. Just first thing that comes to mind, we're going to roll with it. First one is, first album you ever bought.
Simon and Garfunkel's Greatest Hits.
Craziest thing you ever saw on Warped Tour.
Oh God, that's a,
That could have been a podcast episode all on its own.
Yeah, that could have been the crazy thing of Warped Tour. For me, it's a lot of times it's taking those bands on those days off and watching people experience things they never experienced, whether it was whitewater rafting, skydiving with Angelo from Fishbone, things such as those are the crazy things,
Yeah, absolutely. Most underrated Warped band of all time.
Wallpaper.
Oh no. Band that caused the most chaos on the road in a good or bad way.
Most chaos on the road. Well, Alien Ant Farm once almost we almost had her. He had been slaughtered in a parking lot from the other bands if I let it go any farther. But he learned a lesson that day.
Oops. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Okay.
Tea. Wow, one of the few.
Yeah.
That's a question we ask everybody, and there's only been you might be the fourth tea we've had so far.
We're all caffeine addicts out here. I'm drinking coffee right now at 9:00 my time.
Yeah, something wrong with
you. Best prank on tour you've ever seen?
Oh, well, there was this whole thing with Pennywise where he would sit up in the rafters of a building or hide and shoot the bands while they were playing with a pellet gun.
Oh,
while they were playing. So we got a bunch of those Zimas. They were a drink that everyone.
Yeah, I remember the Zima. That was my first ever beer. I stole it out of my mom's fridge.
That's what he used to drink. So we got ghost pepper sauce and we put it on him of his Zimas before he went on stage.
That's rough.
So while we were all sitting back in our lawn chairs. It was a really weird setup in Detroit where we could actually sit by the buses on Will Hill and watch the stage. And then we watched him grab these Fletcher and put him, drink them, and watch him grab another one. And then his face was blistering while they were playing.
That's insane. Guilty pleasure artists you'd love to see on Warped Tour, even if they don't necessarily fit, quote unquote, the Warped Tour formula. Jelly, that would be awesome.
Very awesome.
I feel like he sneakily fits in that world, though.
He'd be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Last one for you. One item you've never toured without. You have to have it on every tour you ever do.
My bicycle.
Okay.
I was going to say the bike. I could have guessed it. It. All right, this is the last question. If you got a 5-minute phone call right now with Kevin Lyman just about to head out on Warped Tour 1, what would the message be?
Dude, only do 5 shows and go home. Don't do all 25. You don't need to do 25 the first time around.
That is a ballsy move on a first attempt at a tour like that, for sure.
25 cities. That was. We sure learned a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine so. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for giving us so much time today, and on behalf of all of us who are lifelong fans of this world of music, thank you for creating such a incredible place for all of us to go and experience, amazing live music and just be with other like-minded people and experience, different parts of the culture that we probably never would have been exposed to without 100%. Something like Warped Tour.
Yeah, nice to see you, Josh. Nice to see you, Chris.
You too, Kevin. Thanks
I'll see
for
you in
everything.
a parking lot shortly.
Sounds good.
You'll see you soon. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Take care.
Hey everyone, Chris here, and I just wanted to take a second to say thanks for watching today's episode. You can check out more episodes of Late for Load-In on the right side of your screen and find any applicable links to this episode in the description down below. There you'll also find a link to our Patreon, which is the most direct way to support the show, and it's only $1 a month. Please consider giving this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and be sure to follow us on all social platforms, at Late for Load-In, at Chris_TGI, at Josh Carell. See you guys next week.